Welcome, welcome, Miss Tracy, to the call. We'll be getting started here in just a second, my dear. All right, Bryce, welcome to the call. We'll be getting started here in just a second. Good to see you, sir.
Oh yeah, good to see you too, man. Good to see everyone out there today. Let's do this. Let's get this Wells formula happening. I'm ready for it.
Yes, sir. We're getting started in just a minute. We're going to let some other people roll through. We'll be getting started shortly.
All right.
All right, all right, all right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, support, for opening up the call in what we like to say supreme fashion. My name is Suni Samad. We are going to go ahead and get started with our wealth formula. And I'll tell you what, you guys are in for a treat. Give me a thumbs up real quick if you guys can see my slides. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Good to go. Awesome stuff. So, again, my name is Suni Samad. I'm one of the business directors here on the platform of our infinite company. And I tell you what, you guys, I hope that you have a pen and pad because this is going to be something that, if you have never heard this, could become a cornerstone for changing your life economically and financially. Okay. And so we always say, where I'm from, my mentors used to tell me, what you take for granted gets taken from you. Right. And so I want to mentally prepare you for the information. See, I don't want you to be casual about the information, because if you're casual about the information, you may miss the message, right? And so a little bit about me, you guys. I came into the finance industry after about 21 years in the medical field. Okay. And during my time in the medical field, what predates my career in the medical field was me always being a serial entrepreneur. And so when I came into the medical space, right, I always knew that there was something bigger, something greater, something different out there for me than just the W 2 despite how much it paid me, right? I was the type of person where they could have paid me $100 an hour, and I probably still would have found a sense of dissatisfaction. Anybody else out there feel like that? Put a one in the chat if you kind of feel like that, shoe, right? There was something innate about me that said, listen, as long as somebody else is determining my value, right? Like I'm not okay, right? But because I had no mentorship in the financial space, right? I became, instead of an entrepreneur, I became a tripreneur. Anybody else out there a tripreneur, right? You try a little bit of this, you try a little bit of that, right? People say, you always got something going on. I was known for being the guy who always had something going on. Anybody relate to that, right? You've always got something going on other than this job, right? And so because I was that kind of person, I believe that that's what led me to this industry because I do believe that finding is for those that seek, and I do believe that open doors are for those that knock, right? And, 21 years later, I found myself hitting a wall spiritually, emotionally, right? Where I was completely dissatisfied. One of my mentors, he likes to call it the day of disgust, okay? Where you just realize that, you know what? I'm going to do something different, even if it kills me. Right? And I remember finding myself leaving my job one day. This is a true story. I left my job, my W 2, and there was a recruiting office for the military across the street. And I crossed the street on foot in Tracy, California, right? And I knocked on the door of the recruiting office because I was so hungry for something different that that day, without no notification, I was willing to sign up in the military. And what I found was I wasn't really looking for happiness anymore. I was searching for fulfillment. I knew that, the money itself couldn't really scratch that itch. I had upplayed my job in the medical field. I was making 26, 27, $28 an hour. My wife was in the property management space. She was making six figures. Together, we were making about $250,000 a year on paper. We had $250,000 a year cars outside. We had a pool table in the loft, a soda machine, a swimming pool in the back. On the weekends, everybody came to our house. But I was so unfulfilled. And what I found was the very thing that I was chasing that I thought would bring me happiness was eluding me. And I thought that if I chase money, I could get it. And one day my mentor, he told me, he said, Suni, if you chase money, it'll elude you. But if you chase purpose, money will follow you all the days of your life. And that became the changing moment for me. So if you guys are ready to kind of get into this presentation, put a one in the chat or say I'm ready, okay? And we're going to get into what I like to call life-changing information. I hope that this changes your life and blesses you the way that it blessed me. So quick question, okay? Would you agree that most Americans do not understand how money works? Show of hands, right? Would you guys agree that most Americans, right? And so most Americans, they say 97%. And here's the thing about it: even if you don't agree statistically, okay, it says that 97% of Americans are poor or disenfranchised. 97% of Americans are poor or disenfranchised. What disenfranchised means is that you have no relationship with how to become financially successful. You may have all the desire in the world, but you have no resources whatsoever to even begin a journey toward financial freedom. I'll tell you what, I'd rather be poor than disenfranchised, right? Because at least if I'm poor, right, I got some sort of resource, some sort of connectivity to a possibility, okay? But why is it that only 3%, you guys, of the population are considered wealthy? Well, I tell you what, that marginalization of 97 to 3 is actually becoming more like 98 and 2 and 99 and 1. Because of the billionaire population. The billionaire population is further marginalizing, right, the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Now you can make six figures, okay, and still be behind the eight ball. They said that $1 million is the new 100,000. And they said that 100,000 is the new 100 and 100 is the new 20. Anybody ever spent 100 lately and felt like you spent $20? Or is it just me? Right? You spend $100 now, it feel like you just spent $20, like how $20 used to feel. But why is it? I want you guys to write down this one key phrase: financial literacy. Okay? Financial literacy. How many of you guys would have taken Wealth 101, Wealth 102 if they taught it in high school? Yep, right? I would have took that class, right? And I probably would have got an A. Okay? How many of you guys would have took, how to get an 850 credit score 101 and 102 in high school if they taught it in high school? Absolutely. So why is it that financial literacy is so scarce in this country? Okay, well, let me give you guys a quick history, and this is why I wanted you guys to bring a pen and pad here. All right, because this is going to change your life for the rest of your life. You will never look at your financial situation the same. So the public education system is a byproduct of the industrial era. The agricultural era coming out of the industrial era is what created public school systems. And because public school systems were a byproduct of the industrial era, what the industrial era was demanding from the general public of the United States was saying, hey, we need more people to learn basic reading, writing, and arithmetic so that we can employ more people and bring the new industrial era into full swing. See, agricultural America didn't want their kids to work as hard as mom and dad, grandmom and granddad. They didn't want them to till the farms, turn the soil, right? Milk the cows, right? They wanted them to clean up and go get one of those corporate jobs. This is where the language blue collar and white collar was originated. Okay? And so it was never intended from a public education standpoint for you to learn how to be your employer's competitor. So way back then, they taught basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. What do they teach now in public schools? Don't worry, I'll wait. Basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So watch this. It came out of the agricultural era. Okay. In the summer, they gave you a summer vacation because you had to go back home in the South and help reap the harvest. They gave you a spring break because you had to go back home, right, and help till the soil and plant and prepare for the harvest. What do they give you now in school? A spring break in the summer? Okay, I digress. Okay, so I hope that proved my point enough for you to understand why you and I were never taught financial literacy in public schools. And I promise you it won't change. But I want you guys to write this down too. The education in a capitalist country that matters the most is financial literacy. See, in a capitalist country, not having financial literacy is like being in Mexico and not speaking Spanish. It's like being in China and not speaking Mandarin. More than black, white, red, blue, liberal, conservative, okay? This is a capitalist country. The soil beneath your feet called United States of America is built on capitalism, okay? And so let's talk about some of the financial literacy or the financial language that we were brought up on. See, on the left, it says poverty language, and on the right, it says wealth language. But I also want you guys to write down on the left, I want you to take a mental note and call these inherited beliefs. Okay, inherited beliefs. Okay, what does it say? It says go to school, get good grades, and get a good job. Anybody ever heard that before? Right? I absolutely grew up on that. Okay. It says when you find a good job, keep it. Okay. Money is the root of all evil. My mom still says that. Right. My mother will talk about Jeff Bezos like she knows him. That's just too much money. That's what my mom says about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Right. She thinks just because they're wealthy, they're evil. Right? Because she's old school, right? Her inherited beliefs say or associate wealth with people being evil or bad people. And let me give you guys some help. We also have been indoctrinated to believe or correlate being wealthy with being evil. Anybody like me into superhero movies, Batman, Superman, things of that nature, right? Legacy superhero movies, right? Is not the villain always some wealthy guy? Right? It's always some wealthy guy that's about to like ruin the water supply for the whole city, and our superhero has to come and save us, right, from this wealthy villain who all he cares about is money. So we've been indoctrinated as children subconsciously to associate wealth with evil. I hate to ruin your next superhero movie, but now you're not going to see it the same way, right? Okay, the rich are robbing the poor. Anybody ever heard that before? Money doesn't buy happiness. I tell you what, when they told me money doesn't buy happiness, I said, I want to see for myself. Anybody else felt like that, right? Let me find out for myself, right? Don't speak for me. Money doesn't buy happiness. I found $20 in my pocket the other day. I was pretty excited. All right. They don't pay much. All right. The rich should pay more taxes, and things have gotten really expensive. So let's talk about wealth language real quick. Okay. Go to school, get good grades, and start a business. Not get a good job, but start a business. Why are wealthy people teaching their children start a business instead of go get a job? Because they understand that a job is a good place to start, but not a good place to finish. They also understand that's why it's called the corporate ladder and not the corporate bed. See, the problem is we've been taught that the corporate America space, coming from places that I come from, I can only give you my story. I'm from Oakland, California. If you get a job, okay, and a career, you made it, okay? And there's a large demographic of people who feel the same way, consciously and subconsciously, right? Because we haven't been taught that this is a ladder, not a bed. Okay? A job is a good place to start, not a good place to finish. Tell you something else that wealthy people say. They say use your job, your W 2, as your investor for your business. See, it's okay to get a job. It's okay to get a W 2 as long as you don't sacrifice freedom for security. I just helped somebody, I just set somebody free. See, as long as you don't exchange security for freedom, it's totally okay to get a job. But that's financial literacy, right? Because when you've been taught all your life that there's a such thing as a good job, you've been duped. I can prove it. See, one of the reasons that wealthy people say, okay, a job is a good place to start, not a good place to finish, because of this thing called time. And I promise you that if you are in the race or in the runnings for financial freedom, you're really in the race for your time back. Everybody is in a race to buy back their time. Because in a capitalist country, you're on the 40-40-40 plan by default. What is the 40-40-40 plan? 40 hours a week for the next 40 years to retire for 40% of what you make. And we accept it hook, line, and sink because it's been so normalized. And guess what? You're weird. You're odd if you go against the grain. If you quit your job for financial freedom rather than dialing in to the financial security. But why is the time conversation so important? The time conversation is so important because if I ask every single one of you guys, okay, on this call, if I said, hey, I give you all $1 million today. The caveat is you have to end your life tomorrow. None of you guys would take the $1 million. I can up it to $5 million. I say, hey, give you $5 million tomorrow. Today, you have to end your life tomorrow. You would not take the money. I can up it to 5 billion. And you guys with no hesitation would say, nope, I'm good. I want tomorrow, the possibilities of tomorrow over $5 billion today, even though tomorrow is not even promised. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, why do we rent our time for so cheap under the auspice of a good job? I told you never heard anything like this before. Okay, because we're having a conversation, but we're going to talk about the wealth formula at the same time. But I want to prepare you for the information because sometimes we got to think about what we've been thinking about so we can think again because we're all operating on something called inherited beliefs, especially about our finances. Okay, and so money isn't everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. It's kind of important, right? Try living without it, is what Zig Ziglar said, right? He said, money's not everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. Try living without it, right? Money is best exchanged for experiences, not things. See, wealthy people don't buy things, they buy experiences. Things have a beginning, middle, and an end. Experiences last a lifetime in the memories and the hearts of the people we share them with. And don't work for money, teach your money how to work for you. All right. So, this last piece here is what we're going to talk about. Okay. How many of you guys know? Okay. Put a one in the chat if you know that your money can make more money for you than you could ever make for yourself if you position it properly. Okay. Absolutely. Some of you guys know that. So, let's talk about it. My mentor, JT, told me a long time ago, he said, there's only two relationships that you can ever have with money. You're either mastering money or money's mastering you. Sunni, there is no in between. And he said the reason that you showed up 21 and broke, behind on your bills, behind on your dreams, behind on your promises, is not because you are financially insufficient. You've been disconnected from your ability to think for yourself. The true definition of being broke is a psychological disposition. It's not a financial status. Wow. The financial status is a byproduct of the psychological disposition of your inability to think for yourself. That's what broke means. You're broken. You've been broken away from your own thinking. How many of you guys see men who've been married for like 40 years and they don't know where the spoons are in the house? Y'all ever seen that travesty? Right? Men are pitiful when they're married for a long time. Right? You guys seen that? Right? They're like, baby, where the spoons? Baby, where the cups? Right? Right? Because they've been so handicapped by their wives that they've been disconnected from their ability to think for themselves. Right? Somebody knows what I'm talking about. This is hilarious. I don't care if y'all want to laugh, right? That is funny. Right? I love watching older men who don't know nothing no more, right? Because because they got a good wife, right? Well, guess what society does for us? The same thing. See, they promise you security in the form of a W-2. In 10 years on the job, 15 years on the job, you are at a loss. You will go stand in a line for unemployment before you use your own intellectual capabilities to create an opportunity for yourself. That's what broke means. I digress. So let's talk about wealth. Isn't that a great place to start? What is wealth? You cannot get empowering answers by asking disempowering questions. A great question for all of us to ask is, what is wealth? See, I used to think that being rich and being wealthy was the same thing. That's why it always eluded me. I was chasing the wrong thing. I didn't know that wealth was something that I had to attract. And I was miseducated culturally. They used to tell me to chase the bag, chase the money. It was all about a paper chase. And I was like, we didn't even question it. I was like, nobody ever said chase it where? Like, where's the road to get on? What street is that? Like, what does that look like? We just take it hook, line, and sink, and we don't think about what we're thinking about. Right? And that's why I ended up broke. So I had to ask myself the question, what is wealth? Wealth is the byproduct of your money making money for you. Let me give you another definition that's not on the slide. Wealth is your ability to provide value for someone other than yourself. Let me give you one more definition. Please write this down. Wealth is not an income. Wealth is the outcome of value. So my mom used to say things like, hey, stop asking me for money. Money doesn't grow on trees, Suni. Anybody else have a mom like mine, by the way? Right? Hey, stop asking me for money. Listen, hey, you must think money grows on trees. But guess what? Money does grow on trees. Watch this secret here, you guys. When you realize that money is both the seed and the harvest. And every time you spend a dollar, you're spending your future. I'm going to say that one more time. Okay? Money does grow on trees. When you accept the idea that money is both the seed and the harvest, the problem is that we've been taught to only consume the harvest and never sow the seed. But when you get on the sowing side of things, you start to appreciate the reaping side of things. And you have a different appreciation for a dollar. That's why the name of this presentation is The Wealth Formula and What to Do with the Dollar. I don't know if y'all caught that in the subtitle. Okay? So money does grow on trees when you realize that money itself is both the seed and the harvest. So let's talk about the wealth formula. Hey, what is the wealth formula? Please write this down. It'll change your life like it changed mine. Okay, time plus capital. Okay, how many of you guys ever heard the term capital? By the way, capital has a first and last name. It's actually called working capital. Money at work. So time plus capital plus a rate of return minus inflation and minus taxes equals wealth. Isn't that simple? Like, seriously, couldn't they have taught y'all this in high school? Like this ain't this is way easier than geometry class. Right? Like they taught us to go get protractors. We was trying to figure out the circumference and the radius, right? Pi, times radius, right? And all this stuff. Man, they could have just taught us time plus capital plus rate of return minus inflation and taxes equals wealth. And set us free. But again, we know why, okay, that freedom ain't free. Okay? And there's an endeavor to corner the market. Let's just call a spade a spade. So let's talk about time in relationship to wealth. Okay? Time and working capital. So it says here, allow your money enough time for your interest to compound and build your wealth. Question I want to ask everybody, if I gave you all a handful of seeds today, would you plant them in concrete or would you plant them in soil? You would plant them in soil, right? Why would you plant them in soil? Because you are interested in a return. Okay? So, money follows the same concept. So, allow your money enough time for the interest to compound and build up your wealth. I tell people all the time, if you understand agricultural science, you understand wealth because the language is the same. Okay? So, Mr. Start Early and Mr. Start Late came to the Wealth Formula one day. I was presenting, okay? Mr. Start Early said, you know what, Mr. Samad, I really appreciate this information. Tracy, don't laugh at me, right? I really appreciate this information, Mr. Samad. Okay, listen, I am going to start my journey, my wealth journey today, okay? I'm going to start saving $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year at an 8% interest rate. He had a friend named Mr. Start Late who he invited to the call. Mr. Start Late said, you know what, I'm going to kind of wait to see what happens with you. Mr. Start Early said, bet. Okay. Well, by 32, just a short 6 years later, okay, Mr. Start Early has grown a nest egg of about $34,692. Not bad for a 25-year-old who said, listen, I'm just going to start saving under the auspice of something or a law called compounding interest or rate of return. But something very interesting happens after 32, right? It looks like he's no longer investing, but what he's leveraging is this beautiful power called time. Even though it looks blank, it's full of substance. Okay? This substance called time is now growing his money year after year after year after year. All right? So by the time he's 48 years old, okay, he's got about $128,367. Now, at 32, I imagine that Mr. Start Early and Mr. Start Late, they were playing basketball, pickup game. Maybe they were in the gym. Mr. Start Late says, you still saving money, right? How's your account doing? When we went to the wealth formula presentation, he says, man, I'm happy you asked. I got about $37,467. He says, wow, I got nothing. Is it too late for me to get started? Get it? Because he does everything late because his name is Mr. Start Late. Mr. Start Late starts his journey, $300 a month. 3,600 a year, right? But guess what? He continues to have to invest. By 48, he's got about $131,221. He's got about $3,000 more on paper. But because he didn't understand the wealth formula from a concept of time, it cost him an additional $35,000 to reach the same financial destination. In fact, starting early for Mr. Start Early saved him $35,000 because he understood time's relationship to growing wealth. So what is the caveat here? What is the takeaway? I want you guys to write down. The more time you have, the less capital required. The less time you have, the more capital required. So when we're sitting with our clients, okay, the goal is to get them started as soon as possible, not because we want them to start early, but because we understand that every day they wait, okay, the time or the opportunity cost goes up, right? So time's relationship to money is real. No time, no wealth creation. Okay? We do a presentation on our platform called the $1 Million Baby, where we teach parents, okay, how to start their children and their grandchildren along this wealth journey. All right? But I want you guys to write this down. So we talked about time. We talked about working capital. Let's talk about rate of return. Now, I want you guys to understand that the only reason anybody invests in anything anywhere is for a rate of return. I don't care if it's real estate, gold, precious metals, right? Crypto. The only reason anybody anywhere invests in anything is for a rate of return. But how is a rate of return determined? Okay, it's determined by something called the rule of 72. The quality of your soil determines the quantity of your harvest. All right. So let's look at these 429-year-olds. They all have a different soil. 1%, 4%, 8%, 10% yield. All right. I have to language it this way because I want everybody to get it. I want to make this very simple to understand. All right. So if I divide, the rule of 72 says if you divide the interest rate into 72, that will determine how long it takes for the principal to double. So let's look at this 29-year-old who has a 4% interest rate. All right. Well, 4 goes into 72 18 times. So every 18 years, the $10,000 is going to double. 29 to 47, 18 years is $20,000. 47 to 65, that's another 18 years, that's $40,000. Now, let's skip over to just a 6% increase in interest. All right. Well, 10 goes into 72 7.2 times. So every 7.2 years, this principal is going to double. 29 to 36, 7 years, 20,000. 36 to 43, another 7 years, 40K. 43 to 50, 80. 50 to 57, 160. 57 to 65, 320. And if you went to 72, that would be $640,000. You guys, what I'm trying to say is this is powerful information. How many of you guys know people with credit cards? How many of you guys have credit cards? Right? Because this does work in reverse, right? So, in the event that you're paying a particular interest rate on a credit card, that interest rate is going to tell you how long it took for your initial premiums to double in regards to the profit that the creditor is making. Hello. So when you're going to buy that car or you're looking at a loan and you understand interest rates now, according to the rule of 72, you can now divide your interest rate into 72 and say, hey, I'm paying triple the amount of this car in just 4 years. This interest rate is no good. See, now you're empowered. And you can determine your own value because you understand the rule of 72. You understand the rules of the game. Isn't this negotiating power? Yes, absolutely. Okay, Mr. Dealer, I only want a particular interest rate. Based on the rule of 72, it says with the interest rate you're offering me, I'm going to be paying for this car 3 times by the time I pay it off. Okay. And so, but you can also have it work in your favor. A 6% difference on the front end made a $280,000 difference on the back end because someone knew or understood the rule of 72. All right. Put good stuff in the chat, right? Right. Good stuff. Or put a 1 in the chat if you guys are following me. All right. Now, I want to empower you guys with some very valuable information. Okay. I want you guys to know this, okay? The only reason, okay, that anybody or any financial institution exists is to grow your money. The only reason any financial institution exists is to help you grow and protect your money. So the question I want you guys to ask yourselves is, why do I have my money at a traditional bank? Has anybody ever asked themselves that question? See, I know why, though. Let me help you out. It's an inherited belief. See, like me, when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, I started working and my mom said, hey, you need a checking and a savings, right? And so the blind leading the blind, I went and got a checking and a savings. I didn't question it. Okay? And there's some sort of make-believe prestige about having a bank account and a debit card. Right? And so you go get a checking account and a savings account, and you got you a debit card, and now you are officially financial status quo. Right? So, but watch this. Where does the financial institution have your money? Well, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, PNC, Truist have a large amount of money in something called bank-owned life insurance. It's called BOLI, B-O-L-I, bank-owned life insurance. Well, how much of your money is in bank-owned life insurance? Well, let's look at it. Bank of America owns $24 billion. Billion with a B. That's called a clue. Okay, in bank-owned life insurance. Wells Fargo, $19 billion in bank-owned life insurance. JP Morgan, $12 billion in life insurance. Let me ask you guys a question. If I could show you how to bypass the bank and put your money directly where the bank has your money, would that be something you would be interested in taking a look at? Yes? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So somebody say, cut out the middleman. So how does your money grow? Let's talk about how your money grows. All right. Fixed, variable, or indexed. When we're talking about the wealth formula, it's important for us to know, okay, in these particular financial institutions, how your money's growing. See, you ever wonder why you can never create wealth inside of a traditional bank? Is because your bank has your money on something called a fixed interest rate. Okay. And on a fixed interest rate, we can never become wealthy. Never, like never, ever. Okay. Like forget about it. Like not going to happen. Fixed interest rate, 0.02%. I used to work at Wells Fargo. I used to have to say, welcome to Wells Fargo. We've got a new interest rate on our savings account. And they would say, well, what is it? I'd say 0.02%. They would say, well, what was it? I'd say 0.01%. Would you like to speak with a banker? And I had to say that with enthusiasm, right? Anybody ever work at the bank? You guys remember that? Right? So working at the bank, it was like we knew subconsciously that this was a joke, an absolute joke. But why do people hold their money at financial, traditional banking institutions or financial institutions? Inherited beliefs. I hope you guys write that down. Inherited beliefs. Okay. And as long as I'm operating on inherited beliefs in regards to my finances, somebody else is determining my value. Okay. Variable structures. Well, what are some of the variable structures? The variable market. Okay. Your money goes up when the market goes up. When the market goes down, your money goes down. These are your 403Bs, 401Ks, IRAs. How many people ever had a 401K or a 403B? Okay. If you had a 401K or a 403B, that means that your money is in a variable market structure. In 2008, no wonder I lost my home. No wonder when I was into my 401K to try to save my home during the housing market crash, they said, well, you're losing money here too. Right? Nobody ever taught me that the 401K or the 403B was in a variable structure in the what we call risk market, vulnerable to market downturns. Okay. But there's a gentleman by the name of Warren Buffett. Anybody ever heard of Warren Buffett? Warren Buffett is considered the GOAT of investing, and he's a fan of something called indexing. Warren Buffett says there's two golden rules to investing. Rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. I'm going to say that again. Rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one. He's the wealthiest investor that ever lived. And he's a fan of something called indexing. Well, what is indexing? Indexing means that when the market goes up, your money participates in the market on a point-to-point scale. But when the market goes down, your money no longer participates because it's on a point-to-point contract or year-to-year contract. Okay? And so when we're talking about these higher interest rates, when we're talking about indexing your money, somebody says, well, where do those vehicles exist? We're going to share that with you toward the end of this wealth formula, right? Because not only do we have the information or the education in regards to how money works, but we also offer a solution. But let's talk about inflation. So we talked about time, working capital, rate of return. Let's talk inflation. Are prices going up or is the value of your dollar going down? Somebody at California told me they're paying like $7, $8 at the pump right now. Okay. Due to inflation. What does that mean? That means that the same dollar that bought you a gallon of gas is worth less. So it takes more of those dollars to equate to the value of the gallon of gas. Anybody ever play Monopoly? Right? You know, remember back in the day, you used to say, man, that's Monopoly money. Like to kind of say that that's fake money. It has no value. Inflation right now, it used to be 2.91%. For the past 10 years, officially, it just went up to about 4.2%. Okay. So if the value of your dollar or your money grows at a rate, okay, that doesn't supersede inflation, you're losing money. That means that I can have $1 million in the bank today on paper, and if I waited 10 years, okay, I've lost the equivalent of about $400,000 in value based on that inflation rate. See, money has to move. And if money's not moving like a river or like water, clean water, money is dying. You guys ever heard the concept of dead money? You guys ever heard the concept of cash is dead? People say cash is king. No, don't believe the hype. Cash is dead. Okay? If your money isn't invested, anybody ever heard of the 80-10-10 rule? Put a one in the chat. You ever heard of the 80-10-10 rule? Wealthy people have 80% of their money invested. Okay. 10% of their money goes into a savings, and the other 10% is what they live on. Okay. Money has to be moving in order to live. All right. So it's important to understand the inflation rate. If you don't know the inflation rate, then you don't know which financial vehicle is actually growing you wealth. Does this kind of make sense to you guys? All right. Now let's talk about taxes. How's your money taxed? Okay. Your money's only three tax buckets here: tax now, tax later, or tax never, or what we like to call tax advantaged. Tax now, mutual funds, CDs and savings accounts. Tax later, 401ks, IRAs, annuities, and 403bs. Let me help set someone free here. If you have your money in a 401k, a traditional IRA, or 403b, it's nothing wrong with that to the capacity that you have an employer match. But outside of your employer match, you're sending unnecessary dollars to a higher tax bracket. This is what tax deferred means. It means that the money that's going in is not taxed. It's going to be taxed at distribution. Your contribution is what we call pre-tax. Your distribution becomes taxable income. Is it safe to say, let me ask you guys, all right, do you feel like taxes are going to increase or decrease? Taxes are more prone to increase, yes? So if I'm 22 years old, or let's say for the sake of math, I'm 30 years old, it's 2025, I won't retire until 2030, 2055, 2060, right? If I'm 30, I won't retire. That sounds strange to say. But if I'm 30 years old, I won't retire until 2060. Do you think that taxes are going to be higher in 2060 or lower in 2060? Higher, right? So if I'm in a 401k, is it wise to have my retirement or investment vehicle in something called a pre-tax vehicle, where later I'm going to be taxed? The name of the wealth game, please write this down, is to pay today's taxes on tomorrow's distributions. The name of the wealth game is to pay today's taxes on tomorrow's distributions. Well, where do you find those vehicles at, Mr. Samad? That vehicle exists in something called Roth IRAs and cash value life insurance. Under the umbrella of a life insurance contract that has a cash value component attached to it, because the money that has a cash value component attached to it is in the market, the S&P 500, and because it's also attached to a life insurance contract, the money growing in the market cannot be considered gross income. Therefore, it cannot be taxed. So it immediately, something magical happens when you put your investment under the umbrella of a life insurance policy. It converts a pre-tax dollar into a post-tax dollar right away. Somebody say on site. On site. A pre-tax dollar becomes a post-tax dollar the minute it enters a life insurance policy that has a wealth building component or a cash value component attached to it. Wow. Now watch this. There's Roth IRAs and life insurance contracts. Somebody say limitations. There's a limitation attached to a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA says I can only put $7,500 a year max into a Roth IRA. If you're over 50 or 55, I believe there's something called catch-up contributions, where you can add an additional $1,000 to that Roth IRA contribution. But if I'm limited to my investment capacity, can I grow wealth? This is the wealth formula. No. But where am I unlimited? under the life insurance component. So the question I want to ask you guys is, where do you think wealthy people have their money? I promise you it's not Bank of America. I promise you it's not Wells Fargo. I promise you that it's not JP Morgan Chase. Unless you've got like some investment things happening there, right? But they don't have a traditional checking or a savings account, is what I'm trying to say. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? And so, tax never tax advantage. There's a tax code 7702. I want you guys to look this up and do your homework on this tax code 7702. The tax code stipulates that. All right. Under these 401ks and 403bs, okay, these are government sponsored so-called retirement plans. The question I want you all to ask yourselves is, if you have a 401k or a 403b, did you actually sit down and plan it? Or did you sign up for it? Because you can't call it a retirement plan if you never sat down and planned it. A 401k and a 403b is actually a tax code, and it tells the IRS how to tax your money. Okay? This is the public sector, and this is the private sector. This is the public sector. 403b is the public sector. You're a public servant. You're a school teacher. You're a healthcare worker. You're a firefighter. You have a 403b. This is the private sector, 401k. Okay? That's the significant difference between those two and how you're going to be taxed. Okay? Put a 1 in the chat if that was valuable. So when we talk about a wealth formula being structured under a life insurance policy, why is that so beneficial? Okay? It's beneficial because the market is about assessing risks. Yes? Okay? Well, what are some of the other risks outside of a market downturn? Dying too soon, becoming ill, or living too long. Please write that down. If you understand this, you have the keys to the game. What risk am I assessing? Not only the market am I assessing, but I'm also assessing the risk of dying too soon, okay? Putting my money against the capacity that I may die prematurely. How am I prepared for that? Becoming ill. How am I prepared for that? Or outliving my ability to create or produce an income. That's a big one that nobody plans for. See, from 0 to 18, somebody takes care of us, yes? And from 18 to 65, we take care of ourselves. But post 65, if we have not had a great relationship with Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson, we are in trouble. That's just a fact, Jack. We live in a capitalist society, okay? So your greatest asset is your ability to produce an income. Your second greatest asset is how well you can protect it. So let's say I grow this great nest egg, 500,000, 1.5 million, 2.5 million, and I get sick. Well, what happens to my nest egg? It's gone in 60 seconds. Trust me, I worked in the medical field. There's something called a spin down. If you have $500,000 in the bank, do you know that you can't get medical coverage for a major medical emergency until you spin down your savings in order to qualify for the coverage? Absolutely. Okay. Living too long, super important, and passing away, dying too soon. So what is the wealth formula? What is a wealth formula strategy? Let's talk about it, and I'm going to wrap this up. This is personal to me. This is my son's, Tyler Andrew Hampton's wealth formula strategy my wife and I put together for him. Okay? It embodies the wealth principles of time, capital, rate of return, taxes, and inflation. I want you guys to pay close attention. We created something called a funding period. Remember how in Mr. Start Early and Mr. Start Late's illustration, Mr. Start Early had a funding period of 6 years, and then he leveraged time to grow his money? All right, inside of a wealth formula strategy, there's something called a funding period also. My son, we're funding this for 20 years. The working capital that we're putting in place is $156 a month at a rate of return of about 6.42% on the low end and about 15.8% average on the high end. It's tax advantage because it's connected to this life insurance strategy. Wow. What a loophole. Then it supersedes inflation because the rate of returns they exceed the 4% inflation rate. Okay, so the growth of an investment account tied to a genuine life insurance policy cannot be classified as an income, therefore it cannot be taxed. Number one. Number two, unlike your 401k, loan against your money void of taxes and penalties, 15%, okay, rate of return, you guys, all right, over the last 20 years. And there is things like the S&P 500 inside of these allocation suites. They're capped at, 11%, 15%, things like the US Pace are uncapped. So let's talk about it. $500,000 in death benefit says if my son passes away, God forbid he doesn't pass away, right? We want him to live forever, but we're leveraging the life insurance piece, right, to grow wealth. How much wealth? Well, according to National Life Group, it says if I need cash, I can take a loan or withdraw from my policy's cash value. At 69, he's got a nest egg of about 730,000. By 84, he's got a nest egg of about 1.9 million. Not bad for a 27-year-old whose rent I sometimes still pay. Okay? But we're talking about wealth and wealth creation. Are you guys with me so far? Okay. Now we're checking the boxes of becoming ill. Along with this life insurance structure, according to this life insurance structures, and it being linked to a strategy that grows money, is something called long-term care benefits, terminal illness, chronic illness, critical illness, and critical injury. In the event that he were to take on something, because we know the average employer won't cover more than the common cold. Yes. Right? If you have a stroke, heart attack, something like that, you're in trouble. So what do we have in place that's preventing us from breaking the bank in a real medical emergency? So my son now has something called terminal illness coverage, chronic illness coverage, critical illness, critical injury to the tune of about $500,000 and $11,000 per month. All right. Would you say that that's a solid plan? Absolutely. All right. Now, here it is. Because we're in a funding period of 20 years, the most that we'll ever invest is $112,880. Although that's where we cap in regards to the investment, the cash value continues to increase year after year, no matter what, under the law of compounding interest. And we set this policy up to increase in the death benefit. So the death benefit is also going to increase to about $2,020,000. All right. The wealth forming strategy, listen, you guys, in both 2008 and 2020, if you were in an index strategy, you wouldn't have gained anything, but you would not have lost a penny. Why? Because the market did take a downturn in 2008. As you can see here, right, I told you that I lost money in the housing market, okay? But if I was inside of an index strategy, I wouldn't have gained any money that year, but I would not have lost a penny, okay? So who's qualified to work with the person that invited you? All right. Okay. We're all qualified licensed professionals. So if somebody invited you here, get back with that person. We can customize a strategy that works for you. We meet with our clients every 6 months to guide and coach them to their financial goals. All right. So again, you guys, I hope this was valuable. Reach out to the person who invited you, right? And don't be afraid to refer someone to this presentation. If you feel like this was life-altering, life-changing, or could save someone's life, Put a one in the chat. Again, it's been my plum pleasing pleasure. My name is Suni Samad. I'm honored to serve and give you guys this information. Okay. And I will see you all again next week, same time. And don't forget to invite a friend. You guys have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, sir.